This is the story of Kang Han-soo, who begins by not understanding even after 10 years how a boy like him was chosen. Han-soo was an ordinary person who enjoyed comics and anime. That was a thing of the past. Now it's time to go after the Demon King. This is a fantasy world where the most powerful rule. Han-soo is a hero who was named as the Apostle of Justice. Well, he didn't choose that. The natives of that world summoned him and called him that, claiming that he was the hero of legends who would save the world from the Demon King. Han-soo finally stands before the Demon King, the pinnacle of evil, the Demon King Fedonar. Seeing him act, Han-soo is convinced that this is not one of his clones, whom he has killed one after another over the past 10 years, but what would be his ticket back to Earth? Before fighting, he asks Fedonar why he just stood there and watched his subordinates die. Fedonar replies that he always sent strong subordinates, but they were no match for Han-soo, who stresses that if he had been attacked with everything from the beginning he would not have been able to get to that point. Fedonar lost many subordinates over the past 10 years, which meant that Han-soo was getting stronger and stronger. The hero's words didn't reach Fedonar, so the question he has had for 10 years could not be answered until the end. But the important thing for him is to escape from that fantasy world as soon as possible. The fight is not very long. He manages to easily defeat the Demon King, who is sure that all of Han-soo's strength came from the anger of losing his comrades. But no, all of that is a result of his training. Han-soo expected more, something like now I'll take you on with everything. But no, it was the end. Just as he promised, he killed the Demon King. He was crying with happiness knowing that he could now return to Earth and most importantly, he could use toilets after 10 years. At that moment, what he thought was the hidden boss appears to him. But it was not the case. This silhouette is the presence that watched over him for all these 10 years. Something like the god of that world. God emphasizes that the hero's journey was hard enough, but there were people who did not lose their dreams and hope. In addition, he formed many supportive bonds and thanks to them, he learned about love and friendship. God congratulates him and shows him his report card, which makes Han-soo a bit nervous. His results were pretty good, except that the whole bonding thing turned out to be a lie, as he ended up killing all his comrades even though they were completely healthy. The truth is, yes, Han-soo used to go with his comrades before defeating the Demon King. But there came a time when he considered them as an obstacle, so he killed each of them after ambushing them. Han-soo tries to justify himself by saying that he was treated unfairly for the past 10 years, and that these people interfered and imposed themselves on his daily life, using the training as a pretext to act violently against him. This matters little. Despite scoring the most points for that small detail of killing his classmates, he failed the test, because despite having great power, he has a personality that does not match it, so for the sake of the world, he will be returned to the first day of the exam. Han-soo was complaining as he was sucked into this magic circle that would take him back to the beginning. Moreover, he was sent to a professional instructor, because after all, Han-soo has been designated as a trash hero, and that's how he goes back to the beginning of everything. After that, we see a flashback 10 years ago to the time when Han-soo was at school with his classmates, who were talking about what they would do if they were in a fantasy world. One of them wanted to rescue a princess kidnapped by a demon king and then marry her, while another wanted to dominate the world by developing nuclear weapons. By the time Han-soo was about to say what he would do in a fantasy world, he was summoned to the world where he is now. Back to the present, Han-soo was sent back to square one, to the time where he had nothing, no equipment, no objects. The only thing intact from the last 10 years are his memories. A decade is not short. In that time, a newly married couple can have a baby and see it through primary schools, while a middle school student can graduate from university. But Han-soo tried every day to return to his original world, enduring humiliation from his comrades. Just as the first time, he was greeted by Lanivel. This girl is an archaeologist and the summoner responsible for bringing him there. Lanivel gives context to Han-soo, summarized like this. First, the Demon King Fedonar arose. Second, calamity came to mankind. Third, the hero of prophecy was summoned. Fourth, hero, please save the world. Lanivel's name means truth in the ancient language. Han-soo is still impressed to see her even after 10 years. When he was just a boy in the puberty stage 10 years ago, he was mesmerized by her looks. Han-soo tells her to stop pretending to be cute, since it's not very logical to act that way in front of a person who was living well and was suddenly kidnapped. After making Lanivel's expression change completely, Han-soo is informed that the king is waiting for him, just as he is waiting for him. Han-soo starts to threaten them under the pretext that he is the only one in that world capable of killing the Demon King. Having said that, he asks them to tell the king to hurry to see him. If they have problems with that, then let them be the ones to defeat the Demon King. After acting that way, Han-soo starts to hear a voice asking him to control his bad attitudes. This person, who made the space around him distort, speaks to him. Hansu didn't know this girl before, because she is the teacher moral assigned to him due to his lousy personality score. She is there to make sure Hansu does the right things while following her instructions. Hansu's surprise is understandable, since the heroes who already passed the exam didn't know about the existence of the special instructor, because the times a special instructor was involved were very few. Hansu finds it unfair not only that he has to take the test again, but also that someone is added to observe him, after which he starts complaining to Teacher Moral, claiming that he defeated the Demon King as a hero despite everything, leaving nothing behind. But that's the problem. Teacher Moral tells him that by purposely repeating his mistakes, Hansu deserved to have suffered a bitter defeat against the Demon King. However, the opposite was true. Hansu is criticized for not reflecting on the mistakes he has made. She waits for Hansu to become someone who cares for his companions. After telling him this, she takes her leave to return the next day at the same time. Hansu keeps complaining that her companions were a pain in the ass, while Lanuval thought she was acting this way because dimensional transfer was an untested magic, so they didn't know if it had any side effects. Hansu thinks coldly and understands that it's a group of teachers raising heroes, just like students locked up in high school to study. It seems to him that it would be better to kidnap people belonging to that world and not his own. He can't understand the purpose of that organization. What he does understand is that they don't have any evil intentions against him, otherwise they could have killed him at any time if they disliked him, so Hansu decides to cooperate for the time being. In his own way, he asks Lanuval to take him to the king. Hansu thinks, and not being a citizen of that country, he is not obliged to obey his kidnappers, so he will seek an equitable compromise in the relationship between worker and boss, referring to the useless king who just sits on his throne and commands. The guard was able to hear his thoughts somehow, and seeing that he was talking to him in a threatening way, Hansu used his hero stance to take advantage of it. After that, this guy named Alex, who shouldn't be there, appears before him. With the body he has now, Hansu is not able to beat him. But that doesn't stop him, because with a pencil he attacks him unexpectedly and tears his trousers. Hansu tells his teacher Moral that he did this in self-defense. The first time he met Alex, under the guise of training, he was beaten up from day one. Lanuval asks Alex to stop and apologize to Hansu, but what he does is to challenge him to a battle where if he loses, he will kneel down and apologize, but the truth is that he is lying, because the previous time he didn't apologize until his death. Hansu is aware that he has lost his powers after going back in time. But this does not mean that he has become weaker. He is finally taken to see the king and soon insults him for the way he looks, although he looks like this. The king used to go to war often when he was young. At Hansu's attitude, the people there give him a dirty look. The first time he was brought there, he presented himself respectfully, but just now he sees no reason to be on good terms with the king, who will be killed in the not too distant future. Teacher Moral tries to calm Hansu down. He introduces himself in a disciplined and cordial manner, then the king asks to see his abilities. There seems to be no difference from the first one, but something has changed. The strength and assassination are different because of the encounter he had with Alex earlier. Hansu tells his specifications to the king. The king is speechless when he hears that he has a 500% benefit to experience. This means that regardless of talent, he is able to grow 5 times faster than other people. If he repeats something for an hour, it would be the equivalent of doing 5 hours of work. Lanuval is also surprised by the 500% bonus. After that, the king interrupts to say that the crisis falls on the country for being close to the demon territory. So after killing the demons and improving his skills, he asks her to defeat the demon king Fedonar. Hansu thinks that even without the Demon King the country has a lot of problems, so they can't blame everything on the demons, but he tries to control himself, so he politely just asks him how much support he will give him. The king doesn't want to give him any support, which makes Hansu lose his patience and tells the king to find another hero. In the end, the crisis of that country is not his problem, and that in the situation they are in, what he should do is kneel down and beg him for help. A guy tries to intervene in the face of such disrespect, but Hansu throws the pen at him. In the past, that would have been enough to finish him off. Hansu challenges the guards to kill him. If the king dies, the prince replaces him. If the prince dies, the princess can replace him. But if he dies, who will replace him? How will they finish off the Demon King? He believes that there is no reason to treat those people with humility. He even compares the Demon King to the king, leaving Fedonar as someone conscious, because in neither case did he leave him empty-handed. Every time Hansu defeated one of his subordinates, he received rewards. Hansu is sure that those guards could never kill him, and even if there was the slightest chance, he doesn't care if that fantasy world collapses, which is a risky thing to do, because if he dies there is no guarantee that he will be revived. The king believes that the hero is of the possession of the kingdom. This makes Han-Soo follow through with his threats, and now he talks about going to a country where he would be treated better. Being in such a situation, the king has no choice but to agree to Han-Soo's wishes, which are top quality food, shelter, clothes, equipment, a map, and most importantly, money. The teacher Moral did not expect Han-Soo to cause another incident on the same day. She mentions to him that the king gives him financial support, but this will eventually become a loss that he must be able to bear. Teacher Moral mentions that if she had more time, she would have intervened to prevent what happened before, but she was busy with more students, which makes it clear that Han-Soo is not the only hero candidate. There are many students who have already graduated and returned safely to Earth, so she asks him to try harder. After this, Han-Soo starts to think about what he had just heard. Those people use students from Earth to kidnap them and use them as heroes. He thought he was the only human who crossed over to that world. There he is interrupted by Lanival, who asks him if he is sure that he is the only hero who has been summoned to that world. She says yes, so Han-Soo comes up with the idea of parallel worlds for the other students. Something like an online role-playing game to play alone. But Han-Soo has to think coldly about how to get back to Earth in the shortest possible time, so he asks Lanival to follow him. Both go out to buy with the money that the king had given them. The one in charge of managing the money is Lanival, who soon after wants to buy that magic ball because she always wanted to have one. There Han-Soo thinks that maybe they put the wrong person in charge, but he still lets her buy the ball. Han-Soo explains that the price of the word magic is high, as is the high technology of the land. In his first adventure, Han-Soo attracted a lot of attention with his school uniform, so he decides to change his look. Now he attracts more attention, but by appearing to be of nobility he would not have as much trouble and gets rid of the difference with Lanival. She asks Han-Soo where they are going, to which he replies that they are going straight to the black market. She tries to stop him from buying at an illegal auction, but the magic ball that Lanival had just bought is also illegal and Han-Soo allowed her to buy it. So now they are accomplices. She ends up agreeing to go to the black market if it helps world peace, but first they must find the black market. It's hard to find them as they always change the location of the auction. But Han-Soo knows where to go. They can find the address to the black market in an ordinary bar. Arriving at the bar, Han-Soo recognizes Tony, a former assassin who opened a bar after retiring. He had a rather peculiar way of attacking. 2 daggers in his chest and 1 in his head. The first time Han-Soo was there, he taught him how to live in that world. He was a good friend and teacher, but for now he doesn't come to seek his friendship. Han-Soo starts talking in code words so that Tony gave him the address of the black market. The auction would be that same day and the location is in Black Dragon. After talking a little more, he also reveals to him that the product desired by most slaves will be auctioned. After receiving the information, they rush because Han-Soo booked seats for the auction. Han-Soo decides to reveal a secret to Lanival, besides the 500% experience bonus. Since the first time he came to this world he was able to see other people's stats. At first he wondered, why only me? But after listening to Teacher Moral he understood a little bit. Han-Soo looks at Lanival's stats. Her level is 200, which means that even the lowest level Demon King couldn't surpass her. After that, a guy stole Lanival's money bag, but Han-Soo quickly responded by throwing the magic ball at Lanival's back. The difference between that guy and Han-Soo is 7 levels. Once upon a time he would avoid this kind of situation, but now it's different, so he uses all his experience to finish him off and get the money back. After this, the police came and Lanival had to explain the situation. He did not tell the policeman that Han-Soo is the hero. After 10 years of hard work, Han-Soo had a habit of killing anyone he considered his enemy. The average level of an adult is 3. If you have any weapon, it would be level 5. However, the guy they encountered was level 8, so he had killed people before, which would explain the recent killings against civilians. Lanival tells him that he ended the possibility of another victim. Afterwards, thanks to the 500% bonus, Han-Soo reached level 4. Han-Soo is happy because his first prey felt pretty good. Then they both decide to go on their way, while being watched by this elf in the shadows. Later they meet this guy, who recognizes them as Tony's guests, although Han-Soo has to say that he is not his guest but his enemy to be let in. He knew about this place before, but even he was not able to unearth all its secrets. They arrive at an ordinary house that has a magic circle of spatial movement. There they are given these masks to then activate the magic circle from before. Everything is in darkness, but they are surrounded by more people with masks. The first time he was there, Han-Soo got experience. Someone there created this pseudo-religion. It used to be a black market until they started summoning demons. This gentleman appears before them to explain the auction. To bid, they simply ring the bell in front of the seat. The purchase is paid in advance and they are not responsible for any damage or problems caused by removing the mask. While there, Han-Su is unable to call Lanivel by name. On the way to the auction, Han-Su explains to Lanivel to be careful not to step on those little explosive magic circles. After this, the auction begins. The first slave is this guy who they say survived in the Demon King's territory. However, Han-Su quickly deduces that he is a fraud. Thanks to the fact that he can see the abilities, he is able to tell if what they say about the slaves is true or false. Deceived by the presentation, many people bid for this slave. Lanivel only just realizes that they are there to buy a good slave and recruit him as a companion. The first time he was there, Han-Su tried to save an elf from being sold as a slave, or so he thought, because it ended up being someone who in his head only had hatred for humans. The auction continues with this girl who is the clan spirit of a noble family that occupies the Demon King's territory. Han-Su tells Lanivel that they are not there to save any nobles. In a flashback, we are shown that the elf from before would have agreed to free all the slaves even though he didn't think so. The next slave is this guy who immediately catches Han-Su's attention. The appearance of this slave is a bit grim, malnourished and dry-skinned, but Han-Su is able to look at his abilities and has a level of 286. Certainly higher than the other slaves. This guy was a mercenary who was active in the Northern Kingdom. He is in this condition because he refused to eat for a long time. No doubt Han-Su wants this mercenary as his personal slave, so they bid for him and end up taking him. The mercenary is about the same level as Alex, and the reason he is so strong is because he has been wandering around killing people. They hand him the key and the contract and the auction continues. A few more slaves pass by, but none of them are striking. Just as Han-Su was thinking of leaving, they bid on this elf, whose appearance catches everyone's attention. Han-Su wonders if elves are noble. Since they are too weak a species to reproduce for life, they have low fertility rates due to a pill they take all the time. There was a confrontation between the elves and the human kingdom when they lost. The elves escaped into the depths of the forest. Lanivel realizes that there is something strange about this elf. Han-Su immediately confirms it. This elf is level 851 and without a second thought he will bid for her. Her level is as high as the Demon King's dog. When he sees the skills, he notices that she has a curse, which he thinks is the work of a demon. However, he thinks that there is something hidden and that the auction was arranged so that this elf would show up last, and thus avoid a rebellion. Han-Su bids for the elf. The rest of the people stop bidding because they think it's not worth it. As the auction was about to close, the door was destroyed and earth spirits began to appear, meaning that the attackers are elves, led by the elf who spied on Han-Su and Lanivel earlier. Elves attack and guards defend. These elves belong to the royal family, and their leader's name is Sylvia, level 284. She is currently the princess, but when the king of the elves dies, it will be a coup d'etat, so she will have to stop being an adventurer and assume the throne. She is the future king of the elves and formerly a member of Han-Su's team, who asks Lanivel to go to the refuge and wait for him there with the slave they bought. Han-Su asks the presenter if they will give him the elf. His answer is yes, so from now on, the elf's life belongs to Han-Su. The black market guards unite to bring the people in the shelter to safety. In the past life, Sylvia became a slave because she was captured there, but not because she was defeated. It is because in the end, when she alone survived, she was made a hostage. Han-Su talks to the elf and then they kiss, somehow making her life hers. Sylvia tries to stop them while the elf accepts her fate and bids her farewell. Having killed a level 851, Han-Su's level increases to 165. This power is the result of killing someone level 851. If he had done it the usual way, it would take him a year to get to that level. Han-Su mentions that you don't need to be talented or come from a great lineage. With this ability, all you need to do is kill. Despite what he did, Han-Su will still pay for the slave. Killing that elf is the same as killing 5 of them. Han-Su will fight Sylvia. With his current level, he has a much better chance of winning. Now he will make sure Sylvia will never fall into slavery. The fight begins. Han-Su is attacked by several elves but manages to dodge them, although too slowly for what he expected. He manages to take out a level 189 elf and fights this one. Han-Su is attacked with fire magic, but uses the elf from before as a shield. He manages to take out another elf but loses the experience because the elf bleeds to death. Sylvia is still standing and is really upset. There are still several elves left standing. Han-Su mentions that the elves let themselves go too much, and no wonder, because due to their long lives they have created a family atmosphere while living in a community for hundreds of years. Han-Su sees this as the elves' weak point because they lost their coolness and feel emptiness at the death of their colleagues. Han-Su worries that the guards will take away some experience for themselves. Sylvia seems to be on the verge of madness. Han-Su doesn't want to pass up the chance to get more levels, at which point an elf cuts off his finger but he puts it back in place. Sylvia watches all this and wonders if Han-Su is a demon. Han-Su is ready to kill Sylvia. His interference has changed history and the black market couldn't get her as a slave. With the amount of humans she killed, Sylvia's level is 288, while Han-Su's is 203. Han-Soo provokes Sylvia and the confrontation begins. She summons the spirits of the earth to wipe out the whole place. Han-Soo cannot allow this because it will make the elves' bodies useless. Elven bodies are quite expensive. Sylvia can't leave the corpses of her companions and escape. She wants to turn the whole place into a tomb for everyone. Han-Soo laughs at her, telling her that it was her responsibility to invite her companions to the place. Han-Soo takes off his mask and the spirits that Sylvia controlled have stopped listening to her and are now protecting him. Han-Soo then mentions that the spirits are just 4 years of false friendship and that he is much more important than her. The spirits protected him because they love nature, and to maintain nature, the hero must defeat the Demon King. Finally, Han-Soo kills Sylvia. After the fierce battle, the future ruler of the elves has become one of the hero's stepping stones. A glorious end for her, says Han-Soo. However, Teacher Moral doesn't think so. In short, she tells him that even if he defeats the Demon King again, it will be difficult for him to graduate. Han-Soo tries to justify his actions by saying that the elves attacked first. Teacher Moral tries to make him understand the weight of his actions, but Han-Soo only sees experience to level up, even thinking that he is already capable of killing Alex. Teacher Moral leaves him a task to start doing things with a smile, then leaves for a couple of days. Lanival visits Han-Soo to tell him that he is doing what he was ordered to do. The elven body has many uses as magical material, so it would be a waste to leave them on the black market. Han-Soo bought the elven bodies at a low price, plus he paid the black market officials to transport them to the palace. Lanival's task was to make a deal with the king of the elves. He managed to solve it with the magic balls. The land of the elves would visit the kingdom soon. After this, Han-Soo tries to remember the black market expenses, but they have been eliminated, so he can't remember his performance, whereupon he is interrupted by Alex, who heard the rumors and pressures him to go train with him. Han-Soo thinks about not playing along, but Alex provokes him. Alex's level is 291, and when things were getting more tense, Han-Soo remembers what the morale teacher told him. To do things with a smile, he takes it quite literally because he tells Alex that he worked full-time at a funeral home so he could make his coffin. The King of the Sword, Alex, is a rather strong person who doesn't just talk the talk. He is an excellent swordsman capable of killing many enemies while protecting his allies. He was the lion that protected his allies. He was considered an iron wall, but he will soon discover that he is no match for Han-Soo. What Alex wants is to teach Han-Soo how to use a sword, and to beat him up several times, probably. He even proposes to bring the days forward and teach him now, but passes him by, telling him that he is in a hurry. Han-Soo wants to avoid the development where the Elf King doubts him, so he has to act like a level 4 in front of everyone. He also wants to go to the ancient ruins in the forest where he would no longer hide his level and would go even higher. Han-Soo thinks he has grown up a lot and practices Teacher Moral's teachings well. He is more patient. If it had been his previous version, he would have agreed to go with Alex and would have been beaten up by now. Han-Soo asks Lanival about the slave they bought earlier. The real intentions he had with him was to replace him with experience, but he can't do that because of the warning he received from Teacher Moral, so he plans to use him for his journey. The first time he was there, they searched the remains of the ancient civilization, but this time he doesn't have to waste time wandering aimlessly. He has enough places to choose from. Meanwhile, the slave is being fed and is recovering quickly. Han-Soo mentions that the level effects provided by survival in this fantasy world are huge. You can neither concentrate nor choose the scale you want like in a role-playing game. Instead, it has an overall synergistic effect. The more he thinks about it, the angrier he gets after remembering that he lost everything he worked 10 years for. This second round gave Han-Soo the confidence to restore everything, both level and skill. While thinking about all this, Han-Soo was looking for a tent that could serve him. Lanival hurried him for his journey, but he was looking for a way to reduce the distance using a magic circle that would give them a 2-day head start. They plan to leave as soon as they receive payment for the Elven Land mission. For the journey, it is better to go fast and comfortable. He can afford it because he has the money. Going out with the villagers in the village may cause a crisis, and it is not safe to go with them, so he will use all the money at his disposal to buy time and safety. Lanival asks Han-Soo if they are going to the ruins, but in reality they are going to meet a mighty being. Because just as he had Tony as his spiritual master, he also had a master for physical strength. The first time they met by chance, but now he can go there directly. Lanival thinks it is an old dragon, but Han-Soo admires his master, which surprises not only Lanival but also us as spectators. Here Han-Soo thinks about how they have not been able to develop toilets with magic, but anyway, he will now explain to Lanival the preparations for the journey, at which point he is interrupted because the king is calling him due to the fact that the king of the elves has just arrived. Han-Soo wants to let the king take care of the elves, he just wants payment. The hero is asked for a mission. Even though he refuses, it seems a bit difficult, since the prince of the elves came accompanied by someone even Han-Soo is afraid of. He had no choice but to assist. It was the first time Lanival had ever looked at Han-Soo like that. The Prince of the Elves and future king came accompanied by elven royalty. He is one of the strongest creatures in that world, plus he theoretically lives forever. Elves bring the default anti-aging option, but this one has it at a higher level. He is even immune to diseases. There is nothing that can make him die except for killing him. There is no man strong enough in the world to kill a royal elf. There are some cases where their strength is stolen and they lose. But these beings never die naturally. This means that the experience accumulates as a solid layer. Over time the skills are forgotten or diminish, but if a royal elf polishes his skills constantly, the level changes, then this being is born. The level limit that can be reached is 999. If the level is higher than this, it is marked with a plus. Even the Demon King was weaker than he expected. Instead, this elf made Han-Su feel the danger. The Demon King was simply not an opponent for him. The elf introduces himself to Han-Su. His name is Nasu. Han-Su is surprised to be able to talk to him. He even thinks it is likely that this elf has fallen in love with him. He immediately remembers Sylvia to make it clear that not all elves were as wild as she was. These two shake hands and toast to the harmony between humans and elves. After this, the two talk a little. Nasu mentions that Elfheim is a country that is slowly being destroyed and that the current elf king hates humans. He also makes it clear that living forever is both a blessing and a curse. Han-Su remembers that the current elf king didn't talk to the humans who were in the center of the continent. They just stayed in their lands for hundreds of years. He also remembers Sylvia a little bit. She was definitely not fit to be a king. She never learned anything and just liked to wander around the kingdom. Besides, the slightest level of mockery brought out her inner demon. She was a narcissist who liked to watch the world burn. Han-Su is convinced that this prince is planning a coup to take the throne. Nasu told Sylvia over and over again not to belittle the people, but she always disobeyed. The current king of the elves is nothing like Nasu. He was so fond of Sylvia that he chose her to take the throne that belonged to the eldest son. Nasu fears that Sylvia's death will change the future of Elfheim. This is when he asks Han-Su to accept his help in defeating the Demon King. He gives him a sword, which is one of the 3 great treasures of the kingdom. Nasu asks him to give it back after his victory. Han-Su agrees. But as we already know him, we know he won't give anything back. The 3rd treasure of Elfheim is the elemental sword Endymion. The first time Han-Su got it, he helped Sylvia defeat Nasu. And even though he put Sylvia on the throne, he couldn't get this sword. So he didn't think it would be as easy to get as it is now. Prince Nasu asked him to return the Endymion sword after getting the Holy Sword. But Han-Su doesn't plan to get the Holy Sword until he kills the Demon King. Endymion is enough to finish the Demon King. Not only did he give her a sword, but also a sheath made of blue dragon leather. Han-Su says he thinks he prefers a demon sword because they are more provocative, but he can get used to using that one. He has a feeling he will make a good team with Endymion. Moments later, Nasu notices that Han-Su has great strength for a level 4. Normally it would be hard to hold Endymion. Han-Su just says that he's always been strong, but he's actually aware that Nasu noticed his actual level a bit. He also thinks it's possible that he realized that the one who killed his sister Sylvia was the hero. It's likely that he gave up the kingdom's treasure just to prove this. The elves leave the kingdom while Han-Su thinks about how satisfying the deal was. He became rich in only 3 days when he started empty-handed. He has a large amount of money for the trip. He is level 204. He has the Endymion sword and also an archaeologist and a porter. With all that, he would go to the village where the powerful being is. But he is interrupted by Alex, who complains to the king because he doesn't want Han-Su to go on the trip so soon because it is something that is done after he has trained enough. But the king is sure that Han-Su has a reason, so he allows the trip and postpones his training for 10 days. Together with Lanival, they head to the wizard's tower, where they will use the magic circle of spatial movement, shortly after which the porter arrives, who looks much better than before. He doesn't have a name, so he asks Han-Su to call him whatever he prefers. But as Han-Su doesn't want to waste any more time with the slave, he will simply call him Trunk. Later, they arrive at the wizard's tower, which is like a kind of airport, so you have to pay to use the circle. One of his partners in the first round once told him that the work of a magician requires a lot of research and rare materials. The problem with this is that wizards and cities are like oil and water. They are greeted by the wizard's attendants. Han-Su gives him the seal and the king's permission, so they are taken directly to the wizard, who was in a deep sleep, or as he put it, studying the depths of an unknown abyss. The wizard asks them to stand in a magic circle, and after saying things in an unintelligible language, they are taken to their destination. Originally, this journey was to take 1 year, but they managed to reduce it to a few seconds. After that, we go somewhere in the ruins. During the first round, the temple was collapsing and Han-Su was asked to use all her power to run to the entrance. They are in that place because Lanival, being an archaeologist, wanted to explore that temple. Moments later, Lanival saves Han-Su from being crushed. But instead, she is the one who ends up under the rubble and soon after, she dies. Far from being sad, Han-soo is glad that the person who brought him to that world had such a fate, although he was looking for a chance to take revenge one day. When Lanivel dies, he is free from being guarded and that night he planned to celebrate. But the rest of his companions overload him with tasks originally done by Lanivel. Han-soo looks for a replacement for her, then remembers that he has a slave. But Sylvia has never done such tasks and flatly refuses to do them. Ironically, Han-soo wanted Lanivel to come back to life. Soon after she wakes up, all of this had been a dream of what happened before. He wakes up on the thighs of the trunk and doesn't like it at all. Han-soo doesn't plan to make the same mistakes she made with Lanivel in the first round. She is not satisfied with this trip, even though they got there easily using Han-soo's money. The porter agrees with Lanivel that getting there so quickly didn't give them a chance to raise their levels, but Han-soo didn't ask him and shuts him up. Lanivel has been there before, so he proposes to Han-soo to go to the mercenary agency to do some jobs while they level up, but Han-soo doesn't have time for that kind of thing. But the truth is that Han-soo is in no hurry. He knows that the Demon King waited for him for 10 years the first time. In the evening, Teacher Moral talks to Han-soo about avoiding the long journey and skipping the adventures. Han-soo thinks it would make her feel much better if she fought with everything she could. But Teacher Moral didn't mean it like that. She asks her not to abuse the 500% bonus and to level up with normal quests. After traveling for 2 days through a mountain, they arrive at the village. Han-soo was there on the first round, but now he had come 9 years earlier. He knocks on the door calling out to Master Malling very formally. This is the place where the powerful being lives, where they are greeted by this girl, who asks Han-soo how he knows Malling. This girl is the daughter of the village chief. The first time Han-soo was there, this girl was no longer a child. She was a married woman with a child. There is no doubt that Malling lives there. Moments later, he is brought to them and is this slime. Han-soo explains that this slime is no ordinary slime, so he will show Lanivel and the trunk what it is capable of. Han-soo asks to hold Malling, and as he holds him in his arms he begins to feel extraordinary. This slime is the perfect creature for Han-soo. He explains that the human body is imperfect. It is nothing more than a prison of bones. They are weak because they cannot regenerate lost body parts. The body is not a prison for a slime. Although it has no brain, it is full of emotions and intelligence and can move its entire body at will. A slime's body is not a prison, it is a spiritual part of itself. The existence of this being gives Han-soo scientific insights that go beyond fantasy, something that even the people of that world cannot imagine. A power that transcends the limits of fantasy. Han-soo thanks him and says that in the first round he didn't quite learn his teachings, but now he will engrave those teachings into his soul. After that, Han-soo's body begins to change into a more voluptuous one. Han-soo explains that the human body is based on an automatic system called the autonomic nervous system. All those functions such as muscle formation are executed independently of your will. But what if you could control this at will? It is natural for a slime to have complete control of its body. However, there is only one being that is able to transmit this knowledge to a human, and that is Malling. Han-soo is touched by Malling's greatness and thanks him once again. His skill level is growing, now all he has to do is wait. The morale teacher can't believe he's achieving this with a slime as a teacher, and complains that he's achieving everything with minimal effort. Han-soo replies that they shouldn't mention effort to him after bringing him back to square one after 10 years. The morale teacher apologizes on behalf of the whole team of instructors, and mentions that Han-soo was the first student to get an S grade in combat skills. It's true that it took a lot of effort and that they trampled such effort by making him retake the test, so she apologizes once again and leaves, while Han-soo didn't expect an apology. In the first round, without Malling's teachings finished, he was able to kill the Demon King. Now what he will do is to create an alibi of his 204th level. He will fight for power, achievement, reputation, and personality to return to Earth. He will graduate once and for all using all possible means. The hero is evaluated on 4 things: combat ability, achievement, reputation, and personality. In the first round, Han-soo's combat ability was devastating. He was strong enough to kill the Demon King without any problems. In this second round, Han-soo will seek the shortest route for a quick graduation. However, even if he has enough ability to kill the Demon King, it would mean that he may fail due to lack of achievements and reputation this time. Lanivel tells Han-soo that if they have seen Malling, they should go back to the capital. Han-soo tells him that he has nothing to worry about, since they would now take care of the danger around this village, which is something a hero would do, isn't it? Lanivel, hearing this, thinks he's taking his role as a hero seriously, but it's a lie. Han-soo is in search of a pretty good target nearby. In a flashback, we see that during the first round, Han-soo and his comrades discovered a young dragon near the village of Malling. He wanted to kill it, but Sylvia interfered. Lanivel mentions that it is not necessary to kill it, because dragons have always been gentle creatures. The rest of the comrades are also against killing the dragon. with a sarcastic and internally boiling smile. Han-Soo had no choice but to agree. The huge amount of experience he was able to receive after hunting a dragon would be of great help in fighting the Demon King, but those things called comrades prevented him from killing the dragon. But this time there is no one who can stop him from getting the achievement Dragon Slayer. This young dragon hasn't hunted yet, so his level is quite low, but he plans to capture it and get a lot of experience with the dragon heart. That's the perfect prey to create an alibi for his level. Besides, Teacher Moral wouldn't complain about this, would she? These two are a problem for Han-Soo, but if Lanival were to die 5 days after joining the hero, Teacher Moral would call him to attention again, and worse, he would fail the test and have to see Sylvia again. Han-Soo plans to go to a place full of orcs on his own. Orcs are a great source of experience. It's as if they only exist in that world as an infinite source of experience. Lanival and the porter follow Han-Soo, but Han-Soo asks them to stay away while he takes over. Han-Soo's plan is to level up with the orc colony nearby. Then, when Lanival and Porter are cleaning up the mess, he will take the opportunity to go hunt the dragon in peace. The fight begins. Han-Soo easily takes down the orcs, attracting more and more. Even if they are low level, he will be able to get some experience there. It is definitely a method of growth that Teacher Moral would like. Lanival and Porter insist on helping, but Han-Soo refuses. Although he receives many attacks, they are low level, so if he makes his skin tough with what he learned from mauling, nothing would happen to him. By using his body to defend himself from attacks, his resistance level increases rapidly. Well, he can't resist or see everything, so this arrow hitting him in the butt annoys him greatly. The last orc tries to flee. Lanival is about to finish him off, but Han-Soo stops her because it is part of his plan. The orc will flee to alert the rest of his group. Han-Soo is covered in orc blood, but prefers to be like this to confuse the smell of human, because orcs have a sensitive nose ... and so does the dragon. As expected, the rest of the orcs are preparing for their revenge. One of them is level 200, another is level 300, and the orc chief is about level 400. Han-Soo and the rest watch from afar. The plan is as follows. They will surround the orc colony with the power of friendship. First, Han-Soo will go through the north entrance, Lanival will go through the west, and the trunk will go through the east. Han-Soo would like to block the south entrance as well, but because his power of friendship is not enough, they can't do anything about it. But actually it doesn't matter, because the south entrance is blocked with a river, so they have no way out, and they will try to go for the gates that will be blocked by Lanival and the trunk. That said, it is time to teach these orcs the power of friendship. Lanival is at first frightened by the number of orcs he has to face, but he has everything under control. The decoy works, and all the orcs that should be on that side are heading in the direction of Lanival and the trunk. Han-Soo laughs because they are so easy to read. If his memory serves him correctly, this is the place where the orc chieftain is. Upon entering the place, he meets this captive elf who immediately asks for his help, which gives Han-Soo the feeling that things are going to get annoying. This help-me-Mark has haunted Han-Soo for 10 years. He tells her to wait there. The elf is happy that she'll soon be able to go home. Yeah, right. Han-Soo won't waste his time on things like he did in the first round. Even if he gets paid extra to send the kidnapped elf home, it's something he won't do. The boss is level 387, a little lower than Han-Soo expected, maybe because he came 9 years early. He doesn't mind anyway. He'll get the remaining experience from the other orcs. As he unsheathes the sword, the elf recognizes it and starts shouting, calling Han-Soo a thief over and over again, which causes the boss to wake up. The fight begins, and Han-Soo quickly takes down the boss just as he is about to finish him off. While blaming the elf for what happened, he realizes that the elf is level 892, and he has no idea why someone of that level was captured there. It reminds him a bit of the black market elf, but he doesn't really care about her story, because he ends up with her, because she would die pointlessly eventually anyway. So he spared her that part and turned it into experience for himself. The level 892 elf and the orc boss gave Han-Soo a lot of experience. This, coupled with the privilege of having the 500% bonus, made his level start to go crazy. Han-Soo's plan was to take out the boss one-on-one without making such a fuss, but now he doesn't need to, so he'll fight them all at once. The orcs attack Han-Soo, who is completely unleashed. Taking out one after another without any fuss, he felt he was back to the level he was in the first round. Han-Soo received the attacks without any problems, no matter how many times he was hit. He recovered quickly with the skills of Master Mauling. This makes his skills increase even more. He hears cries for help. Lanival and the trunk are surrounded by orcs. Han-Soo had completely forgotten about them, but quickly saves them. Han-Soo reproaches the porter for staying so long against the orcs when he could have retreated. The porter did this because he considers that his life now belongs to Han-Soo. Who never thought he would hear words like that there? It was just what he wanted to hear from Sylvia. After they finish fighting the orcs, Han-Soo sends the two of them to the village to contact Nasu and collect the reward for taking care of the elf who was attacked by the orcs. It is actually the perfect opportunity for Han-Su to get away from these two. Teacher Moral appears before Han-Su to reproach him for killing the elf without hesitation. Han-Su remorselessly tells her that he simply turned the elf into experience for the hero. Teacher Moral tells him to cherish his new bonds and that way he will achieve happiness. Han-Su will think about the new bonds. After he defeats the dragon, then he will be happy. When he arrives at the cave, he doesn't find exactly what he expected. This dragon is neither young nor friendly. It is level 999 plus and ready to kill Han-Su. The dragon is about to attack him. There we see a flashback where Han-Su is waking up after Alex beat him up. A week after being summoned the first time, he suffered a trauma from all the beatings he received while training. At that time, various events were happening in other places. A black dragon with 3 pairs of wings, Ghost Dragon Nebius. Although the resurrection of the Demon King was also a big threat, that dragon was one of the 5 disasters according to the natives of that world. The first time Han-Su was there, it was a long time before he went to eradicate the 5 disasters. Back to the present, Han-Su turns around with intentions of retreating from there as soon as possible, as the dragon's status as Twilight means it won't be able to live for long. The little dragon he had met the first time was simply in that place occupying the empty space this dragon left behind. Even if it's a dragon about to die, it's impossible for Han-Su to fight such a monster with his current abilities. The dragon is after him, although Han-Su tries to communicate with him to get him to leave him alone. The ability to interpret doesn't work on dragons. The fact that this dragon is chasing him like that is due to its skills gained after killing many people. A dragon like that wouldn't let an intruder go. Han-Su keeps running until he no longer hears the dragon's footsteps, but it's because the dragon started flying and prepares an attack from above, which hits Han-Su squarely. The attack was so strong that it was felt in the village. Han-Su is safe, because it didn't hit him directly in the head. The way he survived was by modifying his body with Mauling's abilities, thus avoiding being affected by the breath poison. Han-Su knows that if things go wrong, the dragon with its poison could wipe out even the mountain village, so he knows he must avoid that to save Mauling. Han-Su catches the dragon's eye, and although the dragon doesn't understand, he goes after it. The dragon attacks with its poison again, but Han-Su manages to dodge it and flees to take it in another direction. On the way, some orcs who are not to blame for anything are killed by the poison. Han-Su has an idea to turn this crisis into a great opportunity. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word trash. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.